A couple of issues came out of my last video, what's going on, and it is a bit of an anomaly. I don't know why I was unable to post a comment, and I have no answer. It might be a glitch, it might not be. Given the history on my channel, though, there has been intense activity at times to discourage me from posting my ideas, my thoughts, particularly as it or as it relates to the nuclear cartel criminal syndicate that is allowed to pollute, create toxic elements that pollute everything on this planet. It is an invisible, pulsing, radiating toxicity coming out of every single nuclear installation, not just from bombs, actually specifically a lot more from the plants, the nuclear plants that create thousands and thousands and thousands of tons of this toxic waste that goes into the environment, bioaccumulates over time, and it's a testament to the structure of our physical bodies that we're as resistant as we are. The genetics that is humanity and all of life on Earth, it's a testament to the brilliance of this design. I mean, it is a design. It is something that appears to have a purpose. When things look the way they look with such a complex structure, there is obviously a purpose. This is the philosophical side, not the scientific side, which has been co-opted by people in white coats who claim to be using logic, the scientific method. It would be a good idea, like democracy. It would be a good idea. The scientific method would be a good idea, but it largely is manipulated into wishful thinking to see the universe in a certain way, as in, well, at some point there was some amorphous amoeba. Where did that come from? That first emergence of life, well, where did that come from? Give us that miracle. Give us that miracle of life and we'll explain everything else. This is the mantra of the white coats. We'll explain everything. Once we have the original miracle, well, you can extend it into the big bust that happened billions of years ago, supposedly. Who was there? And well, we don't want to deal with why that happened, but we'll explain everything after we accept that that happened. Did this all come out of my last post? What's going on? I think, yeah, sort of in my mind. Something happened where I was reflecting through some comments and people, detractors of mine who wanted to challenge me and say that I'm not an integral person because I have disappeared on the nuclear front. I'm no longer posting videos on the nuclear front when I was engaged in physical activities that were there. I was representing my opposition to through my physical activism with different people, very few people, unfortunately, very few people. It didn't develop, and there are reasons why it didn't develop, I think. But my activism, my commitment has not lessened, or my conviction has not lessened about the severity of what it is we're facing with Fukushima. I want to make this very clear. But what has changed is my understanding about how each person has their specific, particular gift in order to change, first of all, my own life, their own life, and then as a consequence, the world out there, that external world that I talk about, the internal world, which is everything, the external world begins to change. So in a way, what I've understood for myself is that activism is not just generated. At times it is. At times it's very important to have that physical resistance. becomes more obvious when there is an imminent threat, that when we are threatened, when we're in close proximity to an imminent danger, then the physical world appears to become a lot more obvious to us. But in a large picture, in the sense of ourselves, in the bigger picture, the things that really create change out there is as we change within ourselves. And I understood this after the Fukushima catastrophe activated within me a dread, a fear, a level of anxiety about what it is or the time that I live in, just generally, on so many different levels. Fukushima highlighted for me the fact that we are in a very dangerous time when this complexity and the apparent vulnerabilities that are there but that are not there, that we are very resilient in the sense that these toxins are so deadly to biology and life, but we are resilient. Now, for me, the time frame that we have to put this into a working format for each person. This is really the important part of the time that we live in, that we translate the things that give us pause, that excite us, that inspire us, that give us anxieties or fears, need to be translated through an internal part with a thing within us. I refer quite often to as a calling. It is accentuated, or it is accelerated into the frontal lobe. Into the frontal lobe, we become more aware through a sense of, okay, I'll call it a crisis, like we're in the beer virus crisis, which I'm going to talk a little bit about as well. And the idea that you can tell the extent of a person's activism just by looking at them in terms of their activities is not necessarily a guide to explaining exactly what this person is up to, because a lot of this material that is digested within us may not surface as a physical act. In my case, actually, what I think happens when, as a painter, a lot of this stuff surfaces as an image that things that I have worked through within myself return as an image. And other people, if you are a dedicated activist to externalizing that inner revolution, yes, you appear to be standing on the barricades and making speeches, or whatever it is that the physical activity however it's manifested. And in my case, because I've been a painter for over 45 years, longer even, there is this thing inside me that translates my activism is my work. But I also can step out into the street or stick my neck out for the attack dogs, as they did in 2013, 14, 15, 16. It was quite a level of attack. And now this last video, I was just wondering why there are certain things still that it's not at all on the level or the intensity that it was. But the kind of trolling that I was talking about and questioning why things didn't work properly is connected to that period of time. That's just there. It's clear. It's like thumbs down, 2-to-1 thumbs down. I mean, what for, right? And the people that are engaged in this sort of activity, this thumbs down, attempting to discourage a person not to do a certain thing, it's rather demented and retarded to think that a person like myself, who's been working for almost 50 years dedicated to something, you're going to discourage me. It doesn't work that way. I mean, maybe, I don't know what my threshold would be if you put me on a rack and pull me and, I'd stop. Yeah, I'm not a martyr. I'm not a saint. but it's quite stupid, right? Now, I think a lot of other people get this YouTube harassment a lot more than I do, and they suffer from it. And then, in fact, YouTube has been canceling and eliminating channels, and all that kind of stuff is going on. The censorship is phenomenal. And what was I taught? The complexity about the nature of who we are as people is not understood. It's a mystery. I say it's a mystery. A lot of people refer to it as the God feeling, and have symbols or icons like Jesus or Buddha or Mohammed, and all these characters that represent this inner world that is that is more easily understood when we, for some reason, I don't know, that's part of the mystery too. It seems to be more easily understood when we externalize something. So if I make a painting, I tend to get a sense of myself a bit better than just sort of sitting there and reflecting and thinking, like on the rock thing. It doesn't work for me. Or some people claim they meditate. I find meditation highly unlikely. The way it's explained, I think my paintings, in a sense, are a form of meditation. It's kind of like a representation of that secret inner world that is externalized and is exposed. And the same way, when people honestly, I say honest, much more than truth, I'm on the side of honesty, when they express their feelings and ideas honestly, what happens is quite often a backlash from that group of people who feel threatened by the people that show the courage to show with their vulnerabilities, that inner world, which is a world of vulnerabilities. And it's something that quite often is discouraged, more often than not is discouraged in children, in our educational system. And, it's that archetypal thing. I was always quite tickled with the idea in Britain, the public schools, and the kids that public schools is a misnomer because they're the elite schools, I think, or grammar schools. And they would be in winter wearing shorts. I mean, what kind of torture is that? The British kids wearing knee socks and shorts in winter. It's insane. I'm just giving that as an example about how this vulnerability is exploited in our culture. So out of my last video, what's going on, I was thinking about certain things, and the people that challenged me that I'm not active, not in the same way, but I am resolving something within myself every day in terms of how to become a person that when this segment of our existence ends, that my contribution was to the plus side of things rather than to the negative side of things, whichever that may be. It could be a lot, it could be a little, but it's got to be there. It's got to be on the plus side to make the place better than when I came. And it's reflected in the external world. The external world reflects the success. I think mostly the external world reflects the success of how we have dealt with our inner world, how we have been able to become more honest, how we are not afraid of our vulnerabilities, and those are lifelong tasks. I think they don't stop. You just don't get there. It's like it continues. So what I was also thinking about then, in terms of the circumstances we find ourselves in, personally, I need to conjure levels of inner strength and inspiration to continue to do what I do. Because number one, I mean, the archetypal character in this is the Vincent van Gogh story, where a person works feverishly. I mean, he produced enormous amount of paintings. I think in the last 2 years of his life, he produced almost 1,000 paintings. He worked like there was no tomorrow, and literally there was no tomorrow for him, but in complete total obscurity. And as it turns out, and he's not the only person, but there are many people that find themselves isolated within their their understanding of themselves in terms of their calling, in terms of what it is, or their attempt to isolate and understand more deeply what it is that they really love to do. It may be difficult, but it's something that is such an urge, such a strong urge, and to be able to isolate that into a physical manifestation is very important. This is something that a lot of the Swami types talk about, this, that the only real meaning in our life is to come to terms with this inner world as it represents our true nature, what it is, who we really are. And I mean, there are many painters out there, artists, people that call themselves artists, and it's not for me to judge whether they are or they're not. I mean, I have my tastes and proclivities and understanding of what a good painting may look like, but it's not up to me to say, oh, well, this and that person this is what they should be or shouldn't be. I mean, much of the work being produced now is such frivolous, idiosyncratic shit, I have to say. It's not a matter of being able to, I find it so, it is such an error in people to say this kind of activity is recognized to be a much higher or better activity than this. So let's say somebody loves to work with machines as a kid, loves to work and take a clock apart and put it together, or a little motor, and then the parents say, no, you have to go and become a doctor or a lawyer. Like, my parents originally, they kind of gave up on that idea because I had no patience and tolerance for sitting in classrooms and watching a person spout shit off to me. I had no proclivity for that, so I was relegated to maybe maybe he can become an engineer or a plumber or electrician or something, and to ascribe or to insist that a person is a certain way and for their own good is just stupid. It doesn't work that way. Does that, like, I want to make sense, because I talk about this a lot in terms of calling, in terms of what it is, what can you identify is the real nature of a person? What is it within me that makes me feel like I'm in that sweet spot a lot of the time? I feel really good where I am. And it can't be imposed. It can't be superimposed from outside. It has to come from inside. And finding this is very crucial. Now, it becomes a lot more difficult, I think, in the circumstances we're in, or maybe not. I think maybe in a crisis situation, there may be a kind of bloodletting in the population where people become more sensitive to their needs. It's what is happening. I think there is a large contingent of people who understand. I don't know how big it is, 20% more, 15%, I don't know, that understand that the period we're in now is so unnatural. I call it the new abnormal. Is so unnatural to everything that has come before, which in many ways was unnatural already, but now it has escalated to a level of unnatural, abnormal, that it's possible quite a number of people, well, there's going to be people that find this extremely difficult, and others may actually find it inspiring to be able to focus more in on oneself rather than having our eye on the world out there, because everything is reduced now to racism, Black Lives Matter, beer virus, political oppositions. It's kind of polarized in very few ways. Terrorism has almost disappeared. It's coming back again. There were attacks, but it was curious to me that the whole terrorist narrative disappeared for 7-8 months, and now they got to bring it back again because maybe the beer virus isn't enough. So I think this is a very, to understate it, I think it's an important time, but the world will go on. Even with the extreme destruction, the world will go on. I am convinced of this. The format and the way in which it will be manifested externally is a direct reflection, as I say, of what each person does within themselves. And this is an important time to focus on this inner world, a time when they say, oh, you got to stay home, you got to be away from each other. All this kind of directive, all these arbitrary impositions will ultimately determine. It's like forging the steel, and it's like the smithy of my soul is being forged by these adversities, and this is quite promising. It's difficult, and the level of anxiety and depression rises as we no longer have those substitute desires. I mean, the things that we usually feel accomplished with or by, and accumulating things and all the activities are removed, then it leaves us with a rather narrow range of discovering the self, ourselves, which will result, once this is in place, this could be a very negative, it's a backlash against these reptiles, what they're doing, that you're going to have a population that's a lot more determined to realize their own self in the world out there. This could be really quite fascinating over the next 15, 20 years. Now, in what I was thinking, I'll end it here. My thoughts on the spear virus is we have a son who lives in Madrid. He has some medical issues, and he has been designated for some minor surgery, I guess about maybe 6 weeks ago. And he was treated for his condition and sent home with the prerequisite that within 8 or 10 days he would return to have the minor procedure done. And at the time, he was also tested for the beer virus and came positive. And I think he had a slight infection, which is why he had a fever, but they decided that his pest was a PCR test, came back positive, like it does with most people, I think, or most of these PCR tests have 90% of them are wrong. They're showing positives when people are not. I don't even know what the hell they're looking for, because they haven't even isolated. This virus has not been isolated to be able to test for it. So everybody knows in their mind already that this is a bogus test, but hey, let's give it. So anyway, he was tested and said sent home for 2 weeks, and we'll discuss your situation in 2 weeks. So fine, in 2 weeks, he was ready to get the procedure, and then but before we do the procedure, no manifestation of any symptoms, all right, other than a bit of a fever, which came from an infection, I think. And then fine, okay, quarantine, bingo. Now we'll go back for the procedure, but before we do it, we have to test you. He tests positive again, second time. Send them back for another 14 days in Spain, and the Spaniards are just absolutely virulent on this. The authorities, the bureaucrats, have really stepped it up into the next level of virulency. These are maggots out there in Spain on a top level. I think France is, as well, is really reacting incredibly harshly. So okay, fine. So he's beginning to suffer now with this minor treatment that he needs, but he's got to stay home again. So, okay, he's positive 2 more weeks. So that's 4 weeks. Now, he comes back after 4 weeks just to do the same thing again. And again, he's tested positive. He has not one symptom whatsoever. He's perfectly healthy in every way, but he is now considered, and this is his wife tells me, that he is considered COVID, not one individual, but he's now considered to be in the statistic as three cases. He is 3 individual cases of COVID. This is how he goes back into the statistic to further their program. So what I'm thinking is, obviously, this is an endless program of statistics that will keep the society in a state of illness and sickness in perpetuity. This is what it says, that you can be You can have gone through their procedures, but it's not good enough because you're going to be considered a sick person, whether or not you're actually showing symptoms. This is a program in perpetuity. So this is what we're facing. This is, I think, what the beer virus has come down to. It has allowed this despicable medical cartel through all the other institutions of our demise. The digital networks are contributing to it through Facebook and the Silicon Valley bastards. They're all part of this whole thrust within creating a perpetual state of illness, a perpetual state where people are considered a threat, and they're called a threat by some amorphous bureaucracy, and everyone that wears the stupid thing in their face is basically compliant and looking at the person they know. The person they know is a threat, not the people that are amorphous, making these ridiculous, having these ridiculous states and requirements forced on them. They're not the culprits. Is the person you know to be healthy on your side are now a threat. So this is what it's developed into, and just some thoughts after my what's going on. Maybe that's what I should have really talked about. And you know, that YouTube, I can post or I can't post. If they take my channel away, I really couldn't care less. I don't give a shit. I'm doing this basically. Why am I doing it? I say to myself, why the hell am I doing this? Why? You know, it's sort of like I have this affliction. I think I'm an exhibitionist who's also quite shy, which is why I work well. Painting is a very solitary activity. You can't do it in groups, really. It doesn't work. I've tried it and it didn't work. I shared studios. That was early on to save money, but it's a solitary activity. So there is a kind of, there's a feeling of release out of that solitary state. I mean, when I put on an exhibition or a show, there's a short period of activity and excitement and all that kind of stuff. It sort of fulfills a need in me, but obviously that has been eliminated now with the directives. So there is this YouTube thing gives me a sense of satisfaction, even with a small, I say small, but I think it has to do with the fact that I'm representing something that I feel to be of importance, and it's meaningful, and it's just something that, like a painting, it communicates something to a person who is able to see and maybe make some use of it, even if it's a few people. It's like if a person can take something away from what it is that I can put out there. I think they're like my wife is a musician, so she needed the stage. She wasn't a composer, she was a singer. And then she's a teacher. So there was something in, there is a necessary stage for people. I think to do it in obscurity makes no sense ultimately, because we're all connected and we want to share stuff. But the activity itself that I'm involved in is solitary. And her studying and practicing and working up to performances, the performances in a sense were the completion of everything that went before that made her the person that she is. I actually think that the value and the person is I see her more as not accomplished through her performance history, although that's important, but all the things she went through to be able to do the thing that she was doing. Like that the quality of this person wasn't just how well she performed, but everything that went into putting her be able to be in that position to present something to people out there. And of course, she reached a very high level within that activity, within that, in the classical format, she reached a very high level. I would, in terms of, I've heard a lot because of her. I've heard a lot of singers, and but the real accomplishment is because we have recognized that thing within us which is meaningful, and we pursue it. We no matter what. And I think it's like the YouTube thing is kind of. I think I've realized this. I I am a solitary person, but I enjoy the idea of exposing myself as well. So it satisfies that, whether it's 5 or 10 or 100 people. It's kind of that sort of fulfillment. I get some level of fulfillment. But as I say, if they if they remove this thing, I'm not going to miss it very much. It's I would, I don't know, it's hard for me to say, I suppose, in certain ways. You don't know what you're missing until it's gone. Isn't that a song or something? But anyway, I think I'll end it here. It's kind of like a rounding up of what's going on, and this incredible complexity that we're involved in cannot be reduced to simple answers. But there is a way of being, what's the word, more wholesome, finding meaning is everything. It's like that sense in oneself, in myself, that I'm involved in an activity that makes me a better person, and as a result the rest of the place ends up being better as well. Yeah, I'll leave it here. I'll leave it here. Thoughts for the day.